the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EDtech, episode 15, recorded Friday, May 3rd, 2013, NCIS, Anaheim. Welcome to EDtech, the education-focused podcast put on to you by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tim Albright. I'll be your host for the day. With us this week, as always, or this month, as always, is Mr. Scott Tyner. He is from Bates College in beautiful northeastern U.S. I almost said northeastern Maine, sir.
You can say whatever you want. You're the host. Thank you for having me today. It's going to be a fun time.
He's from beautiful downtown Bates. Where is Bates again?
Bates is in the wonderful city of Lewiston, Maine.
Lewiston, Maine. Is it named for anyone? Like anyone famous?
Is Maine?
No, Lewiston, not Maine.
Lewiston. No one's famous from Maine.
What? Scott, doesn't Stephen King live up there?
Yes, Stephen King. You're right about
there
that.
You go.
I'm sorry. No one from Lewiston is famous besides me. I'm a pretty well-known guy.
Yes.
It's not Canada, but you can see it from there.
Yes.
I'm pretty important. My library smells of mahogany and leather.
Jeez.
That could have gone to a very dark place.
Could have. That voice right there is Mr. Matt Silverman. He is from George Mason University. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you very much, Tim.
And last but not least, from gorgeous, sunny, but burning California.
Eagling in the background. That sounds like the wind's in the background now.
It does. Is our buddy Mr. Greg Brown. How are you, sir?
Hello, guys. Hello, world.
Yay. This month we're going to talk about a couple of different things. Good Lord. We have projectors. We have projectors on tablets. And we have one thing that we're going to kick off the show with. This is our April edition, even though it's May 3rd that we're recording this, because I don't know how to use a calendar, basically. And that is
lost under the floodwaters, right?
It was. I'm in St. Louis, so we had a couple of feet of floodwater here, and that was the dust up over the Crestron and Extron and AMX switcher videos. Brief recap: Crestron posted a couple videos comparing their switchers and their HD video handling devices versus an Extron and an AMX, respectively. Extron took exception to it, made their own video. AMX eventually did the same thing. Mr. Tyner, we're going to kick it off with you because you actually wrote a blog post about this on the fine Rave Publications website. What was your take overall, now that everything has been said and done and even AMX has gotten into the fray? What was your final bottom line take on this?
My final take was much like AMX's, which was, who cares?
Amen.
Literally, we're talking about milliseconds here. And that was the point of the article I wrote, which is, you can look at the Crestron video and say, yeah, I see. And I did. Boy, that's a little weird. They did that way. Just even with some of the cuts and the like. You could also look at the Extron video and say, just because they show us a time on the screen doesn't mean, that's actually the time. But in the end, why are they fighting over something that just simply doesn't matter? That's what I don't get.
Yeah, I don't either. And that was I also got into the fray and wrote one myself. And that was kind of my thing. I did take both of them to task because at the point that I wrote mine, AMX hadn't even mentioned anything yet because they both could have done a better job on the video. This is, the broadcaster and me going, well, you could have done this and you should have done that. But yeah, it's much ado about nothing, especially guys like us who, we have to worry about professors pushing buttons multiple times. If it's a second or two difference, big whoop. 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, when they were showing us the first HD switchers, they were pushing 30 seconds, depending on the device that they were feeding it, right? I mean, I think it was the Apple TV took up to 30 seconds to negotiate the handshake.
Now, the color issues that Crestron purported to show, I think those are more problematic, and that's something worth talking about and doing a video about. But literally, when you've got to put a timer on the screen that goes to hundredths of a second, well, then you're making your point that it's a stupid video, and I think that's what AMX said. AMX won that battle so good, which was like, we're not even going to bother.
Yeah. Mr. Brown, what was your final tabulation of this hoo-ha?
Yawn. Yeah, basically. I mean, yeah, okay, great. Monitor A is 0.3 seconds. Monitor B is 0.5 seconds. I am undoubtedly going to use brand C, and it's going to be, I don't know, 0.7 seconds or something like that. I mean, big whoop. I mean, sort of, I haven't seen the AMX response, but yeah, I'm kind of like, a pox on both your houses. I mean, Crestron, if you are going to do a video where you bring somebody else's equipment in and do a shootout, and I'm doing the little air finger quotes on the shootout there, do your freaking homework and make it look like a legitimate shootout, which it really didn't. On the flip side, as far as the NCIS Anaheim episode, guys, Extron, you guys make a lot of great equipment, and I love it, and I have friends there, but you guys take yourself way too seriously some days, like most days.
Days that end in Y.
Yeah. Gosh, it should have been. I think it would. The Extron video would have worked much better as a little. Hey, what about this? What about this? Hey, we don't know this. We don't know that. A little bit more. Point out the things, but in a little bit more sort of casual. Don't take it too serious sort of thing.
Yeah, they did take it very seriously.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, almost creepily so. Anyway, let me stop before I get myself in trouble.
Mr. Silverman, you're the final one on this tabulation. What does it come down for you?
I've been thinking about this one for a while, and for me, what it actually, I think, demonstrates something Scott kind of touched on is how out of sync at times I think manufacturers and even by proxy integrators can be with their users. And that this isn't what we care about. I was actually thinking back to the first Crestron DM presentation I ever went to, where I sat through 2 hours of similar presentations where they told me every little technical thing. And at the end of the day, the thing which I actually came back and said, do you know what sells this for me? The fact that you can transcode any signal I put in to one signal out. Mm-hmm. That is awesome. That fixes so many problems. You should be selling the product based on that. I can pitch that to my administration. I can pitch that to my colleagues. This solves a problem I need. And it just strikes me that in the industry, we're often trying to create solutions in search of a problem. And that's a real big issue for us in the industry, is that we're not actually trying to solve real world problems. The other thing which occurred to me was something from the IT industry was network computing has had it for years, something called the Real World Labs. And it's where they, as a trade publication, actually tested network gear in an actual application scenario, which I always found was kind of interesting. And actually in the early days, like when wireless products were coming out, manufacturers made bold claims about how far their product would reach, and they said, okay, let's test it in a typical office scenario. And I think we've always missed that in this industry. We just don't have anyone who's doing that kind of neutral or independent third-party testing.
A plug fest sort of thing.
Well, let me ask you guys then a question then. Is it back in the 90s, they had the start of the projector shootout. And nowadays, More than one person wrote about this. It's kind of a silly thing. Brad Grimes from Infocom actually wrote a very good blog about this, and he didn't mention any names, but he said, I think manufacturer A, B, and C, I think. But he said, have a UL listed site and do an actual scientific test where kind of what Matt's talking about. You bring in the products and make them apples to apples, right? If you're doing HDMI switchers, do HDMI switchers, right? And get the same begin points and end points and this, that, and the other. Is there maybe room for that for an actual scientific empirical study shootout like thing?
I don't think so, because I mean, if like you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, if we were talking about things taking 45 seconds to switch or 60 seconds to switch, maybe. But I mean, again, we're talking about milliseconds. So again, I think the issue with color, we all see that with digital sometimes. I think that's maybe something that would be interesting to see in a real world setting. I truly believe that some of this started out with a couple of dudes at Crestron just sitting in their test lab and like, hey, let's videotape this.
That's how it came across.
And somehow it ended up on YouTube,
Yeah.
And that was just the wrong way to do it if you're gonna bring another manufacturer into the battle.
No, and in all fairness, I believe that video, and I may be wrong about it, it was out on YouTube, but it was actually inside of an authenticated piece of Crestron's website to get to it. That doesn't mean it excuses it, but I'm not sure, I guess, if anyone was from marketing or public relations or anyone may have really thought about that one before it went out.
Well, and then I'm not trying to pick on Crestron here, but somebody put thought into it because they edited it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was one of my points of contention with them. It's like, look, guys, if you're going to do a side-by-side comparison, don't frickin' edit your stuff. That was the one thing that even Scott mentioned about Extrons. He showed us everything.
So Greg, you didn't see the AMX one, but the best AMX line they had was, do you know what the fastest switcher is? It's people who switch from Crestron and Extron to AMX after they use their equipment.
Very nice.
It was so, you've got to watch AMXs, and anybody who's listening has got to watch AMXs because it was just, that was classic good marketing.
Yeah.
They brought a gun to a knife fight, and it was appropriate.
Yeah. Very well done.
I love it.
I do too. All right. Well, we're going to stick with Extron for a second here. And not for nothing, but because they do make some good products, even though we poke fun at them from time to time.
You're choking on that line there,
I am not
Tim.
choking on the line. They do make some good products. None of them happen to be digital products, but hey, I say that in love because we're going to talk about a digital product. Years and years ago, they came out with a product called an IN 1508, Ice Cream Nancy 1508. It was, in my estimation, probably one of the world's best switcher scalers. I mean, it just worked, right? It was a tank.
I have one excellent piece of equipment.
I have several. I have more than one integrator friend. Like, you have to use this thing. It's great. Well, the one downside about it is it doesn't do digital. It doesn't do HDMI, right? It doesn't do HDMI with content protection, at least. It does have a DVI switch, or port, but I'm not going to get into that. Now they have a digital IN 1508. It's called an IN 1608, and according to the specs, it does do content protection. It has about 4 HDMI ports, inputs rather, and 2 DB15s, what we commonly call VGA connectors. Matt, we'll start with you on this one. Was this something that they probably had to come up with to, the evolution of the 1508? Or was this, we kind of talked about this, was this a solution to a current problem?
Well, I was really happy when I finally saw this product because I think they are getting closer to getting it right. And I mean, this is a really nice one. For the first time, they actually don't tell you have one box, which is your switcher, and now you need another box, which is your long haul cable, because it has the built-in XTP. I think it's XTP or maybe something similar to that.
DTP.
DTP. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not quite sure, honestly, what the difference is between XTP and DTP. So, but the idea is that you can actually get it to your projector without needing to have a second box. And I've had this conversation with a lot of the reps, and I'm like, we don't want 17 boxes. We want compact and easy to use solutions. So I look at this and I think in most conference room or classroom scenarios, this is actually probably a really workable solution. And I'm really happy it's out. It just seems like it took forever to get to market. And at least for me, I've already adopted an architecture. So while it's a neat product, it's not something which I'll be looking at because I'm already invested, actually in my second generation of digital. So it's great. I just think it's a little late to market. I remember the 1508. I remember the same sort of issues you remember with the 1508, actually. It was really great after they got to about the fourth or fifth firmware on it. But I think it's a good product. And I think if someone hasn't made the switch to digital, I think it's something they should look at. I think, though, it has some competitors. There's an Aurora multimedia product, which is very similar. I think, Crestron has the whole DMPS line, which is a little bit similar but a little bit different. But I think it's hitting a good price point. And I think for some people who may have been waiting for that Extron branded solution, it's going to be what works for them.
That's a good point. Scott, is this, like Matt said, it's a good solution for Extron to finally have something that's similar to, it's not quite DMPS because there's not a control system in it, but it does have, you have two, analog inputs and the rest of them are digital.
So, Matt, what is the price point of that? Do you know?
Give me a sec. I think.
Okay. So here's my take on it, and I agree with so much of what you say, Matt, which is it's a good product, but it's just a little late, right? I'm already invested in something, and yet I hate to. We're going to sound like we're no longer the Crestron fanboys. I hate to reward Crestron for that because I truly believe that for the past couple of years we have been beta testing products for Crestron, and as we've done it, we've become invested in them. But I've had some issues over the past few years that I never had before. And I really do actually think that Extron puts something out when they know it'll work. Is this actually available? Because that's my other question, right? Because that's the other thing Extron does. They tell you about something, but it doesn't actually come out for a year and a half.
Well, it says call for price.
Right, so that's what I'm looking at too. That's why I couldn't see the price point, and it doesn't tell me. It usually, though, it does say shipping on such a date. So I'm assuming that this is ready to go. I actually think it's an interesting product. Even though I am dedicated into some of the DM products, I'm actually going to take a look at this and think that if I can pair this up with a CP2E or something at a fairly low price point, much less expensive than some other solutions. Maybe, I guess, depending on what the price point is.
Yeah. Mr. Brown, is this something that is, it's a good thing for Extron to come out with a digital solution here?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everybody. I'm curious to know what exactly the price point is and whether it is shipping, but it looks like a good unit. They clearly did their homework, and over the last couple of years, they've come out with some things where I look at it and I'm like, I'm not quite sure what they were thinking. I understand the use for this, and I think this is a very useful piece for a lot of people. And like the other guys, it would have been impressive a year ago, but I'm glad to see they got it out.
Well, let me ask you guys a question about that in general. I think Scott or Matt said, they don't put anything out unless it's ready. That's true, but the question then is, do they need to hire more engineers? Because
no.
Well, I'm asking in general because there's a legitimate concern here as people who have Extron products, and there are people who are Extron fanboys, just like there are AMX fanboys and Crestron and Aurora. And if you're dedicated and sold into that company, the last couple of years you've been kind of sitting, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for them to come out with something. that is legitimate and stable for some sort of, twisted pair with digital and content protection. So do they need to hire better or more engineers?
I think they need, and this is something I'm going to criticize across the board with a lot of these companies, I think they need to start putting together roadmaps and actually working with their end users, not necessarily the integrators or not necessarily the consultants, like a lot of the computing and networking manufacturers do, to treat us like partners, even more so than some of the current partner programs, and work with us on developmental roadmaps, so we can actually build architectures alongside our partner companies, and that we're not sitting there twiddling our thumbs and wondering when are they finally going to deliver the product they need.
Well, I would say, Matt, and you might have a different answer to this, but Tim, or Greg might too at the size of the school you're at, but Tim, how many faculty or students have come into your classrooms and demanded an HDMI auxiliary connection?
One.
Exactly. But we've been sold now for 4 years that you just get a switch and switch immediately and spend thousands of dollars to do it, and there's just no choice, and yet because they want us to buy their stuff.
Well, and to that end, one of my good friends is Kevin Iselli. He used to be my education rep for Crestron, and he and I went after. It sounded like we had a fight, but we had a tiff. I pushed back for a long time. I said, there's no way that people are going to sit around, and I was sitting in my my ivory tower ensconced in education. I said, there's no way that people are going to allow this to happen. And I was talking about the analog sunset, and I was wrong. There's not much we can do. And so I have changed my position to one of, you don't have to do anything, to you're going to have to do it when the demand is there. And every education facility is different, right? There are places like MIT, and I'm imagining this. I don't work for MIT. I don't know anybody there, but I'm imagining that those guys are pretty high tech, right? They're on the bleeding edge of technology, and so they've probably had HDMI since 1974 for crying out loud.
I think they created it.
Yeah, but guys like me, right? I'm in the Midwest for crying out loud. They call it flyover country for a reason. I just got the White Album. Joke, folks.
A few of those guys are dead, Tim.
No, seriously,
they're not putting out any more albums.
But
I'm surprised Matt and Scott understand the White Album.
Well, I am too. Oh, but I still buy VCR DVD combos because my faculty demand that, right? Yeah. I have one gentleman who is God love him. He's real big on technology. He sometimes tells me stuff. He teaches me some stuff on technology, and I've hooked up. He has one room. He teaches film history and a couple other art classes, but he wants a digital connection to his projector, and so I've hooked him up, and that is my one digital infrastructure room that actually gets used. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say that, but I don't have this huge, giant anxiety push to, oh my gosh, I have to get all of these done by, last December, or I have to get them done by 2015, which is, when the rumor that there will be no more VGA connections.
You have not missed the boat.
No, and I don't think we have.
Right.
And so I appreciate what Crestron has done. I have some of their product, but I didn't feel this great, huge push 4 years ago to get, oh my gosh, I have to get all this stuff because the analog is going away. I guess I'm just too stubborn to buy into it.
I mean, another perspective to look at, and this is kind of where we went, is we knew day one we were ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at our inventory right now, which is, I think, we're going to be approaching 225 classrooms next fall, we start looking and saying we can't upgrade all at once. For us, it's about a 7-year cycle to hit everything. So it wasn't necessarily about where we needed to be when we started, but it was more when did we think it was going to be mandatory when we ended. So we had 100% coverage when we felt that people would start being upset that we don't have digital. Last time I looked at our statistics, which has been a while, our number one device used in a classroom is the PC in classroom, and we have a PC in every classroom. 73%, I think, was the utilization. So of everything that's used in a classroom, 73% of the utilization is the PC we put in the classroom. So everything else is quite secondary if you think about that. But what we're seeing is when we look at auxiliary HDMI versus auxiliary VGA, I think we're running about 50-50 now. In current data on how many people are using one versus the other.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that what you're finding, Scott?
No, that's not what we're finding. We have people with RGB still coming in, VGA. We're getting to a point now, and this is why I was getting at, which I think Extron's actually got decent timing on this, where people want to bring in iPads, and the new iPads, their dongles are HDMI, and so that's where we're starting to see some of the change. But I don't, like you, Tim. We haven't missed the boat. I mean, we've switched some to digital, but I think, again, well, and you got to give them credit as well. Crestron has been brilliant marketers on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think they are in a little bit different position in that I think this, if I can say, delay to market or coming to market later, I think they could get away with it better than AMX or Crestron, because I think a larger percentage of the people who use Extron are they're going to see this as a pejorative, but the kludgers. They're the ones who are adding the single digital input with, the CAD extenders plugged direct into the projector or something like that. They're whiz-banging some sort of input if they really need it. I think I just get the impression that's a lot more common amongst your Extron users, and so maybe they were in a position where they could handle coming to market a little bit later than everybody else. And just for the record, we had somebody using a Microsoft Surface to present just recently.
Oh, wow. What was the connection what's the connection on that?
Well, we're trying to figure that out because
so it wasn't successful.
Yeah.
No, we all know about it because it came in as multiple trouble. Actually, it was not only multiple trouble calls. It was a webcast class. So we were all going back and looking over the gruesome video of the projection failing mid-class 3 weeks in a row. And it was really bizarre because it would be working one moment and then the picture would freeze, go to black and white, pixelate. That was it. Frozen black and white pixels.
Greg, next time that happens, bring in a document camera and just put the Surface under the document camera.
Or get Steve Summers on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had that thought, but let's just say I wasn't at that particular point going to suggest it. But we think it might be an adapter issue. I mean, the only thing we've got in that room is a VGA input as far as a laptop connection. So it's got to be an HDMI to VGA or a DisplayPort to VGA or something like that.
I hate to admit this, but I have done that before on an old Mac that I couldn't get.
No.
I have. No, seriously. It was one of those professors where I'm using this device come hell or high water, and I'm like, okay, here we go.
You just admitted that on air, Tim.
I did. And what's sad is it halfway worked. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. I mean, I don't know. All right. One more time around the horn. We'll kick around Extron here for something. Mr. Silverman, you have opened my eyes to something called collaborative technology, right? Where a bunch of people are getting together. And we've talked about this a couple times on the show, whether it was furniture or just technology that helps people get things done, right? I'm not using that because somebody has that phrase trademarked and they sell a really good product, doing that. But Extron has come up with something called Teamwork. and it's digital and it's collaborative, and it's something that I think in your email said that it was Extron letting me go, that's kind of cool.
Yep. No, it's an interesting product. They just released, and it's a follow up on an analog product they had, which was a Show Me VGA switcher. Basically, it's an HDMI cable with a button, which I think is phenomenal. It's that whole simplistic user interface. Assuming you have the system set up, you plug the HDMI cable in, you hit the button, and it shows your display. And they have these, I believe, in 4-user and 6-user varieties. My biggest beef, and I couldn't have a conversation, I guess, without having a beef with a product, is that... I think I'm equal opportunity on most product reviews, is once again we're separating analog and digital. And their solution to bring analog in is ungodly expensive. You need another 3 boxes and cables and things, and effectively you run a VGA into a converter box into your teamwork thing. But it's a good step in the right direction. I think the cable is utterly brilliant. I actually wish I could just buy the cable as a standalone thing. I have a project I'm doing right now where I actually tried to get some cable manufacturers to build me that cable, and no one was really willing to do it. So I think they hit that one dead on. I think, again, 5 years from now, when we're like 85% digital and your VGA port is abnormally, this is going to be a kick-ass, everyone's going to want it solution. It's another one of these rough transitional products where you need to take a teamwork setup plus a show me setup to create a supports everyone collaboration area. But it's definitely heading in the right direction. So I think this is a good product. I think it's going to be a strong competitor with the Steelcase. What is there? Mediascape. The Mediascape line. And I think it's probably what we're seeing is they're actually earlier to market, because I think we may see a lot more of these coming out at the show this year.
Oh, very cool. Greg, is this something where at UCLA that you guys could put in place, as Scott or as Matt said, it's kind of a transition product for situations where you need collaboration?
That's a good question. The whole collaboration end of things is something we're trying to figure out, and it's more political issues than technical issues, as is most of this stuff. It's a neat product. Yeah, everybody's jumping into it. I agree with Matt that this is something we're going to be seeing a lot more of. The separation of analog and digital, does sort of bother me a little. But then I'm like, well, what do you want? Like a hybrid of a switcher that's a mix? What are you going to do with cables? It's like, it's a hell of a time to be jumping into this sort of, or it's a hell of a time for this collaborative type stuff to get really popular, just as we're trying to figure out what our connection is going to be this month. Good product. I like it.
Mr. Tyner, is this, because you're familiar with the other collaborative products, is this something where Extron is actually kind of leading the lead in the front here because it's digital, and I agree with Matt, the cable itself is brilliant.
Right, and we're going to buy one as soon as they come out. We had a project going on with our library where they were looking at the Steelcase product, which is a decent product. It's essentially the same thing, just add a few zeros after it, and we were telling our library, if you buy that, then you're going to have to deal with the furniture company for technical support. We actually had come to a point where we were going to actually build them a similar thing. Obviously, we couldn't get that. We couldn't do that cable. It was going to be a little push button. And when I saw this, I said, fantastic. I mean, we don't buy a regular table. We'll put up an LCD panel, throw this in, and you've got exactly what you need. I think it's great. I think if I was going to have one issue with it, it's actually the size of it. just as a whole and all of the equipment, it's bulky. And finding a place to hide some of that is going to be hard for us to do. But I think it's fantastic that it's a major, AV company that's putting this out rather than a furniture company. And I can see us using this in a lot of spaces because it does come at a pretty reasonable price.
Yeah, that was one thing that always scares me. Anytime a furniture company says, "Hey, we have tech," oh, where'd you get it?
Right.
And well, actually, in the case of Steelcase, that would be Altenex.
Oh, well,
that's who makes their guts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, it sounds like, Scott, you're running into the same thing that is my concern about the number of pieces you need to make it all run. I'll tell you, just an open challenge to any manufacturer who may happen to be looking or listening to this show. Give us a product, 4 VGA, 4 HDMI, 2 HDMI out, and I think we'd love you forever.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Very.
For this sort of an application, that's I don't know. That's a heck of a switcher to be putting under, you got 8-10 tables in a room or something like that.
But if you look at there's a couple of people who have product like that. Actually, the Extron 1608 isn't too far off of that.
No, it's not.
It just doesn't have the cables. Presentation Switchers actually has a product which is an under-table product, which has all those inputs, just not exactly the outputs.
Well, and let's be frank. I could put a 1608 underneath the table with the right mounting hardware. I did that with MA207s for years.
And what we're thinking about when we do this is, again, some little things that the Extron put out that just make me very happy are their little dongle security things.
Those are slick.
Yeah, so we're going to take this. Cool. We're going to throw on the Thunderbolt to HDMI adapter, and boom, they can't get stolen. People with Macs can use them. People with PCs can use it.
There you go.
Very cool.
Kudos to Extron.
Yay! Yeah. See, we don't hate you. We just question you sometimes. You're listening to EdTech. That gentleman right there was Scott Tyner. He's from Bates College. Matthew Silverman is also here from George Mason University, and Greg Brown at UCLA. From Gizmodo. How many of you knew this was going to happen? The first tablet projector. Dun, dun, dun. It's something called Lumitab. Of course it is. And it says that you can get a 100-inch display out of it. And if you look down farther, it says it's a 35-lumen projector. Now,
did you see that?
854 by 480.
There you go. That's startling resolution.
Yeah.
You could like play Pong on that.
You could.
In a very dark room, as they say.
I was speaking to the resolution, but yes.
If you go in a closet.
35 lumens, 854 by 480. That's I'm thinking this has somewhat limitations as far as your applications.
Here's what I read. Let me translate one sentence here for you, because the fact is that we'll talk about this in a minute. People don't care about TVs or displays anymore. They care about looking at it on their tablet. And so when they write, corporate honchos who live and die by PowerPoint presentations are surely smiling ear to ear now. What they should have wrote is old dudes who still need something up on a big screen.
Yeah. So when I sent this out, let's say I was thinking more about the concept than the actual implementation here. But it was something I kind of looked at and I said, well, this is neat. And then I looked at all the specs and I said, yeah, never going to buy this one. But it's kind of the thought, and we've tossed around the Pico projectors, and they really haven't landed well here. But it kind of struck me that as we start doing, again, these collaborative, these flipped classrooms, these more team-based learning, wouldn't it be neat if rather than having to install all this infrastructure for small groups, they could actually just project from the devices they were using in the small groups? And I thought I thought as an application, it has potential. Maybe this isn't the best implementation, but I could definitely see something like this actually reducing costs if they could implement it well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more of that, of people bringing these sorts of things in. This bring your own device, is not only going to be, the tablets that our IT folks all know and love, but it's going to become things with projectors and bigger screens, perhaps, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a growth industry.
And see, I'm of the opposite opinion altogether. I think things like this are, like Scott said, for the old guys who need something big on the wall. I think you need to look and watch people who do some sort of share casting technology, because all of us here know somebody who is, let's say markedly younger than all of us. Whether it's nieces, nephews, my kids, these students coming up, they couldn't care less about a big screen. They couldn't care less about what's up on the wall. They want what's in their hand right now, and you give them the ability to. You give professors the ability to take over the tablet that's in the kid's hand and project on there, and then let's get real crazy. Give the kid the opportunity to annotate on his own tab what the professor's talking about. I think that right there is kind of where we need to be going, rather than the other way with tablets, which is, let's slap a Pico projector on it. Good for them for coming up with it, but I don't know that this is where we're headed.
Yeah, you and I are on the exact same page with that, which is, and I go over this over and over again with schools, and I think it's hilarious when they tell kids they got to put their tablets and their phones away. It's like, how about you let them use it? How about you put the image on it? They want it in their hands, so put it in their hands. Yep.
And there are people out there much smarter than I am that can give you the opportunity. I mean, to overtake a tablet's image. I mean, especially if the school provides the tablet for them, well, then you can put the software on there, and then give them the opportunity to kind of a reverse AirPlay, right, where you have one source and you shoot it out to the multiple devices. I just gave somebody a $1 million idea, so because I'm not smart enough to do it.
Well, everybody's coming up with their ideas in that field as far as the collaboration type software and the apps and stuff. But I think that's part of the problem. Everybody's got their own app. They've got their own little thing that they use for that, and some will run on this tablet and then they don't run on this tablet. I think that area, it is going to be will become bigger and hotter if some of those issues can be worked out a little bit better than they seem to be to me at this point.
Well, and there's another story that I was actually going to skip, but we'll go ahead and get into it because it makes perfect sense. On the New York Times Bits blog, Matt, and I don't know how to pronounce the guy's last name, I think Richtell, talks about BYOD or BYOT as he calls it, bring your own technology, where schools in Central Florida and Atlanta and Houston are encouraging the students to bring in their own devices. It's something where, depending on where you are, and every parent's going to have their own opinion about when their child should get what technology. But by the time you get into middle school, I'm going to argue that, let's say at least 50% of the students have some sort of technology somewhere, right? Whether that's a Kindle or it's an iPad, or it's an iPhone, it's an iPod Touch. It's some sort of technology with either iOS or Android. Maybe if their parent is a diehard Microsoft fan, they have a Surface, but they have some sort of technology where, like Scott said, you let them use it, right? Because it's what they already have in their hand.
That is so hard, especially for K through 12 schools to do. I've got a post coming up on Rave about a very similar topic about this, because in the state of Maine, we have this whole laptop initiative for middle schoolers, and they just awarded the contract to HP instead of Apple. All the everybody's throwing up their arms. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And my point was, you need to be, you should realize that if you've made a mistake at this point by thinking things are always going to stay the same like that. And people bringing their own stuff, people whipping out their iPod Touch, their iPad, their Slate, it has got to happen. We've got to be more flexible. And if you think it's hard in like a college, think of what it's like in a K-12 where you've got a 1 to 400, one tech person to 400 user kind of ratio. But it's where it's got to go, and it saves money. It makes sense. It engages people.
Well, not only that, but it also cuts down on any sort of learning curve. I mean, you let kids bring in what they're already using on a day in and day out basis. You don't run into issues like, people learning either Macs or PC for the first time. I teach audio production at the college that I work for. I also an adjunct professor, and I teach Pro Tools. And a couple of years ago, we made the transition from PC to Mac, simply because I just found that audio and video editing equipment or software works better on Macs. Well, you get these kids from public schools who have lived with Microsoft products their entire life, and you show them a Mac for the first time, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's an alien, and I don't know what to do with it. It's like, let the kids use what they're using on a day in and day out basis, and it'll just be a lot more seamless.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, and with the bring your own device, I think it's really, in a sense, going to come down to money in a lot of cases. The alternative to, like Scott was saying there in Maine, and I read about that just recently, where you're buying all the students' laptops. The alternative to, across the state, you can do that in Maine where you have 1,000 students or something like that. But the alternative to bring your own device is you buy a lot of standardized equipment. Bring your own device, you let the kids and the parents pay for everything. You have to chain your IT guy to his routers and make him fix all the IT problems that raise their ugly head with bring your own device. But that's just beating up the help. Universities are great at that, and you don't have to spend the money. It's a win-win situation.
I think the challenge becomes, though, is actually making sure if you go to a bring your own technology, you can support the instruction, which I think gets lost in here somewhere, which is a lot of times I've seen initiatives like this, and we do a laptop loaner program for our English 101 classes at George Mason, where we actually severely overestimated the demand for this program, because it doesn't actually require technology. It's a support functionality where the English 101 kids actually do composition work in class and post it in real time. And we ended up getting some netbooks, and we do a loaner program where basically they check it out for the class if they want. And what we found is, given the option of checking it out or bringing their own, something like 80% brought their own because they were familiar with it. But in that case, all we were asking for was a word processor. So you had a lot of free options once you got online. Where I've seen challenge with this is when you get into more specialized programs, where that may or may not happen on the K-12 level. I can't really speak to it, but our College of Arts has a couple of programs that require Apple laptops for the reason, Tim, you just stated, is they're doing either video or audio or even photography or graphics, which require a certain platform. Similarly, I think one of our College of Science programs just went to a PC requirement because they have some computational programs which require a Microsoft platform. So it's a hard place. And then when you get down to us and the people who have to make this all work together, I think the biggest problem is, and particularly with and I'm going to say an Apple ecosystem, Apple still doesn't play well with others, and it's not an open ecosystem. So one of the big things I see with Bring Your Own Device is you need people who support open standards or open or interoperable technology for us to really get to that point where we can adopt this. Because until you get to the point where you really you can push anything to anything, I think it's still going to be a challenge.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
I think that some of it is, and I think you're right. I think we're still moving towards a direction where that's going to happen. But I think what we've seen with Google and Google Drive and Google Apps and Google Docs, I can't believe that there's still public schools in this country who are paying Microsoft for licensing of Office.
Well, I can, because you get support from Microsoft. There is no support to speak of from Google
to type.
I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's always as clear cut as free is never free. Free is often free, like in free beer. You only rent it, and then there's sometimes some side effects there. But I think there's always a cost to free. I mean, there's no one ever gives anything away. And I think what we're seeing, though, is Office 360, I think, is the best example of how a large company has gotten scared, not necessarily of competition, but of being tied to a platform. The fact that Microsoft has put 70% or 50% of the functionality of their desktop suite into a web-based application speaks volumes, because it means you can come from any platform at any location and get the functionality you need. And I think that's almost more important, than that Google Docs is free, is that you're now seeing people who are competing in an enterprise environment with virtual applications and virtual services.
We have Office 360 posters all over campus right now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Matt. I just think that I think there are some places in some of the very high-end administration stuff where they might be doing some finance, where they use Excel or something. But when you talk about Microsoft support, it's only because the product's so impossible to use, that you need support for it. I've never needed support for Google Docs.
This is true.
I mean, the administrative stuff, heck, that's what we've got the great big IBM mainframe for.
I mean, I know what that bold and italicized things mean, but I hear what you're saying about free not always being free. I definitely do.
You have an IBM mainframe?
We have an IBM mainframe that runs all the backbone stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We also have 34 IT departments.
Good night. All right. On that note, real quickly, another one from Mr. Silverman, who just likes really cool technology. Pancast, a panoramic HD video conference call thing. The sucker's got 6 cameras in it. Matt, are you going to use this thing?
I don't know. I saw this, and I saw their sample video, and let's be honest, quality isn't that great. I mean, it's a $600 product, but for $600, it's phenomenal. I took a look and I said, in a video conferencing classroom or some of our lecture capture classrooms, we put a camera on the instructor where standard PTZ works fantastically. But when we try to put a camera on the students, we really can't capture the entire classroom. And so usually the camera will be on the half of the classroom that the students are not talking in. And I saw something like this. I said, wouldn't this be great to put, center room on a front wall facing at your students? And if you're doing lecture capture, if you're doing video conferencing in a classroom environment, you could capture everyone simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see someone like Vadio or Sony or Panasonic or one of the big camera guys do something like this in the pro space. I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, or even you have a conference, in the president's boardroom. You put it in the middle of the conference table, and there you go. You have everybody.
Yeah, I think that the video conferencing on that level. I think we've talked about this before, whether it's Google Hangouts or Skype, or it has just completely blown up here at the college. People are just constantly using it. And one of those struggles that we have, particularly with Skype right now, to be honest with you, is keeping products that Skype will recognize. And I have a belief that that's done on purpose. I won't get into my theories on that. But so I think devices like this that give you some alternatives to that kind of really low cost or free conferencing is really cool.
No, very cool. All right, gentlemen, last but not least, we're almost out of time here. We're going to give you guys the chance to encourage others to join you at InfoComm. Both Mr. Greg and Matt Silverman are presenting sessions, teaching sessions at InfoComm this year in Orlando. So, Mr. Brown, we'll start with you. What sessions are you presenting this year?
Well, actually, Matt and I are both presenting, along with somebody else whose name escapes me. Who is that, Matt?
Dwayne Smith.
Dwayne, that's
yes.
Right. The Technology Manager's Survival Guide.
Very cool.
On Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., which should be interesting. But, if anybody is still free on Tuesday, come out and check out the Technology Managers Symposium, which is a full day of fun-filled sessions.
Yeah, that one is part of the Super Tuesday thing that InfoComm does.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. You guys are going to be presenting as well as Melissa Dillman from Kramer and a gentleman that is from Microsoft. Scott wrote it. Maybe we can ask him about Skype. So
there we go.
And Mr. Silverman, we have,
and you'll be there too.
I will be there too. I'll be. I don't even know what my job is. I think officially I'm moderating or hosting, or I'm getting you guys coffee or something. I don't know. Matt, do you get a chance to sleep at any point during InfoComm? I mean,
Matt, he just needs to send a document out with everything he's doing. This will be another hour if he's.
No, I got a couple ones that Greg hasn't mentioned yet. On Wednesday afternoon, along with Dwayne Smith and Jeremy Parker, I'm doing a session called Enterprise Audiovisual Moving Past Project by Project Thinking. And we're getting into how to build an architecture, how to staff to that, and how to think about support models. And this is what I'll kind of call like an intermediate level technology managers course, where we're trying to get into really strategic planning in our support operations.
Okay.
I'm also doing one as part of the standards test group that I'm moderating on audiovisual system performance verification. On Thursday afternoon, we're going to be doing a presentation with a couple of the other guys from the task group on the status of the standard and what's in it. And really, it's about helping you deliver the system that you promised. And this is really something for everyone in the industry, whether you're a tech manager, integrator, consultant, or manufacturer. It touches on all of us. And I'll also be giving kind of a shorter version of that at the CTS-D and CTSI symposium also on Tuesday, one of the other Super Tuesday sessions.
Good Lord. You're doing how many Super Tuesday sessions?
2.
Good night, dude.
Yeah. I think I'm opening the Tech Managers one and sometime in the afternoon on the CTS-D, CTSI.
Wow.
So.
You're a busy man.
I'm honored to be in your presence.
Me too. Shoot.
Can I call you a friend?
Why aren't you hosting this?
No, joking. That's pretty cool stuff.
That's very cool.
It feels good to know somebody else who really needs to get a life too beyond AV.
Well, and not to be outdone, Mr. Tyner is a blogger for Rave Publications. He's written several, and he was recently invited and was on The Week with Joel Rollins. A very, very good episode. If you haven't checked it out, go to ravepubs.com to check it out. Very good job, sir.
Thank you. I've learned from the best.
Greg or Matt?
All three of you.
Yeah. No, very good episode. Joel does an incredible job over at Rave Pubs. So yeah, check out that one. ravepubs.com, and also Scott's blog as well. Did you say you were writing a new one?
So yeah, it's actually the column for EdTech.
Okay.
That's going to be coming out in May.
Very cool. All right. Well, there is Scott Tyner. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How can people find you other than Rave Pubs?
I am on Twitter, although I've been very absent for the past few weeks from that. But I'm definitely on Twitter and LinkedIn as well.
Very good. Mr. Matthew Silverman, in addition to living and breathing Infocom, he also works for George Mason University. Where can people find you, sir?
Occasionally you can find me on Twitter at msilveram, but mostly LinkedIn is the best place to find me right now.
Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, Go Bears. He is the UCLA representative on our panel here. His name.
Bruins.
Go whatever. Bruins, Bears, same thing.
Bears or Montana? We've been over this.
No, Bears are in Chicago. Thank you very much.
The
Bears. His name is Greg Brown. Where can people find you, sir?
I should have some more inflammatory material for the Infocom All Voices blog.
Oh, excellent.
Soon, and also LinkedIn, where I'm about to hit 500 connections.
Oh,
so,
look at you go!
Jesus, I'm honored to be in your presence.
No kidding.
Too.
Free beer to my 500th contact.
Am I connected with
guess.
you yet? let me get that
check.
All right. My name is Tim Albright. If you'd like to follow me, seek professional help, go to the website avnation.t. No, if you want, it's TD Albright. TD. Tim David Albright, ALBRIGHT. But I would really appreciate it if you just go by the website, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. This program is there on a monthly basis, as long as we get it in on a monthly basis. DIY, Live Life. We have a new show about control called A State of Control with one of our really smart control buddies, Steve Greenblatt from Control Concepts. This month we tackled the ever delicious question of who owns the code. So that was an interesting conversation, to say the least. And also the weekly AV Week. So if you would, just check out the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. This has been EdTech.